My name is Brandy Starr. I am the Chief Operating Officer here at Tegrita, and I'm also one of the subject matter experts for the sports and entertainment vertical. So today's agenda, I will start with some marketing automation strategy, and we're going to focus on partnerships. So how to leverage marketing automation to give your partnerships team more to sell. So how do we increase that inventory, give additional options for ways that you can support your corporate sponsors. We'll have some time for discussion. So ideally, we'll have you guys take your phones off mute so that we can jump in and actually have a conversation around what you're doing today. I'll ask some prompting questions. So definitely think about anything that you want to talk about, anything that you want to share. I know a lot of you guys are coming from the same industry and already collaborate quite a bit within your leagues. So that's always a good thing. So we want to sort of share with the broader group here. Then, as always, we will have a MarTech introduction. And so we will introduce you to Motiva AI. Motiva is focused on multivariate testing amongst other things, and that ties directly into the strategy that we'll talk about today. And then we have Jesse Noby with Tegrita, who will jump into the Oracle Eloqua how-to. The last part of the user group is very focused on information for the Oracle Eloqua customers. So after the Motiva walkthrough, I'll pause for just a second to give anyone who is not interested in hearing about how-tos within Eloqua the opportunity to drop. Even if you're not on the Eloqua platform today, you are welcome to stay and to hear everything that we are presenting. All of this content will be available next week in our Learning Hub, activate.tegrita.com. The full URL to the sports specific content is below, but just by reviewing activate.tegrita, you'll see all of our content that ties to how-tos within Eloqua, marketing automation strategy that is agnostic to which marketing automation platform you leverage. And then there's also the recordings from previous quarters user groups that you can access there as well. So I will go ahead and jump right in. This topic came up, as I said, I do a lot of the implementations for our sports teams. And during my on-site trainings for the last two teams that I implemented, the partnerships team and corporate partnerships and how marketing can support what is being offered and sort of the pain that comes along with that came up on both of those during both of those meetings. And so I thought this was a good topic that was really relevant. As your sponsors are selling different things, they may be committing promotions within certain email communications. There may be email communications that aren't really working, but we're still having to send them because we've committed to promote something. And so I really want to dig into this topic. I'd say, based on all the use cases, we do the least around partnerships and marketing. So very interested in hearing what you guys have to say around what you're doing today, in addition to what I'll share. So the most common goals when we're working within the sports industry for marketing automation, number one for most teams is usually ticket sales, whether that's promoting season tickets, premium ticket sales, ticket packages, single games, ticket sales, and supporting the sales process is usually the number one use case. There are a handful of teams where they generally don't have an issue with ticket sales. Win, lose, or draw, the seats are filled. And so fan engagement is usually the second key thing. And that's really, continuing to support all of the fan efforts, new season ticket communications, game day announcement, team news, events, etc. And then there's the last one, which is fulfilling sponsorship obligations. And that's where we get into ads and promotions. So today we are really going to focus on that fulfilling the sponsor obligation portion. So what are some of the trends that we are seeing in sports sponsorships? So the first quote comes from someone at ISPO, which is showing that the sponsorships are booming. More and more money is coming into marketing with athletes and sporting teams and sporting events. And the challenge here, or the benefits really, is that there's information overload, there's advertising message overload, the number of marketing messages that people see in a single day, that number keeps growing and exponentially year after year. But the key difference between most organizations and the sports organizations is there's real emotion. And so people are very much tied to their team. There's emotions behind supporting their team, which also ties to emotions related to the brands that are represented for those teams. The second trend that we're seeing is an evolution in the corporate sponsorships and partnerships. So years ago, sponsorships were very much a feel-good expenditure. Companies like seeing their logo on things, on buildings, on billboards, throughout stadiums, and there wasn't really ROI tied to that. However, now brands are increasingly focusing on quantifying their return on investment. They want to show that there is some value that is coming from those partnerships. And so there's a shift occurring within marketers where you have to be able to demonstrate those business results. And so that becomes more and more important for things being connected, things being tracked, making sure that we're getting our sponsors and partners in front of the right audiences, so that that ROI is met and that they continue to spend more money with us. The third trend is the excuse me, digitalization of new opportunities. So, it's not just about throwing a logo everywhere. That part's still important and great, but sponsorship is really an opportunity to run storytelling and content marketing. And as we see more brands get involved in social issues, more brands, take advantage of pop culture, more brands are really trying to tell a story with their message. Just yesterday, I was at a training and they talked about Barclays over in the UK, or no, Santander over in the UK, they were really trying to establish their brand and looked at opportunities for for sponsorships. And Barclays had allowed their sponsorship of the electronic bicycles in town to expire. And so they took advantage of that. And not only did they sign up for the sponsorship to have their logo placed on those bicycles, they really use that as an opportunity for storytelling and content marketing and bringing the influencers in the area to the Santander brand and the bicycles and the city. And so that sponsorship opportunity wasn't just we're going to slap our logo on all of these bicycles and bicycle racks. It became a huge component of content and storytelling around what the brand means. And so where we are able to be an extension of that within our email marketing is extremely valuable. So there's really 4 steps here, and this is what I'm going to talk about today. So number 1 is increasing the inventory that they can sell through the types of communications. If there are more types of communications where we have the opportunity to promote a sponsor or a partner, then that is more opportunities for more sponsorships, for bigger sponsorships, for more things to be included. Increasing inventory through personalization. So there's, where we can't increase the number of things, we are able to leverage personalization to increase the opportunities there. And then once we've done that, it's not just about increasing the inventory, but we've got to optimize the performance. Your sponsors and partners are going to have their own marketing teams with their own marketing objectives. And you guys have the opportunity to help them to optimize what they're doing, to be able to do testing, to see what's working in this arena with this audience. And so that's a key component. And then finally, it's creating a connected experience. Everything has to flow together, from what's happening in email to things that are on the website to the way that the sponsor is represented within the venue. Everything needs to be connected and it needs to flow well. And so we'll talk about that as well. So first thing is increasing inventory through types of communications. Last quarter, or I think that was 2 quarters ago, I talked a bit about the key types of communications that every sports team needs to have in place. This is very similar to what I shared there in that we've got to have triggered emails. So the point of marketing automation is so that not every single communication that we're sending out is someone building an email and actively pushing the button to send it in that moment. We want triggered emails that are triggered based on data or behavior. So, for example, a welcome communication. So, if we have a welcome email that when someone is a new subscriber to the list, in some cases, especially if your arena also does promotions for concerts and things like that, often when people are purchasing a ticket, they don't even realize that they are subscribing to your list. So, being able to have some introductory communication so that they know that they are on the list and what they should expect to receive. If they have the ability to identify through a preference center what types of communications they want and which they don't, you give them that option right up front, establishing a good, strong relationship and conditioning people to be engaged with your emails. Birthday emails are a very common triggered component. You know, if you're capturing in your data who their favorite player is, you could have, you know, a happy birthday come from that particular player. Or it could be more generic and something that's happy birthday from the team. And maybe you're giving them 10% off if they want to, you know, buy a new jersey. And then you have all of the transactional things. So feedback and surveys, those can be triggered by attending a game or some other sort of interaction. You have triggered emails for events. So once they sign up for something that they're getting, you know, whether it's reminders or follow-ups, and then likewise, thank yous. You know, it could be a thank you for the very first time they attended a game, a thank you for attending an event, a thank you for becoming a season ticket member. The key is where there are opportunities to have these ongoing communications that are more pull in that someone is being pulled into a campaign based on something else that happened and not push as in you're defining an audience. These are an expansion of the types of communications that you can have. And so, for example, how does this impact your partners? Using the birthday announcement, maybe instead of a discount for a jersey, maybe it's some sort of promotion from one of your partners, or maybe some combination of both. But where you have these types of communications that are actually going out, this is where you can have a conversation with your sponsorship and partnership team to be able to articulate for them, these are things that are happening. Here are ways that we could potentially leverage this as inventory for sponsorships. Then, of course, you have your game day emails. Depending on the team, some people do a day of email, some do a pregame email, some do a recap email. These are all great opportunities to keep your fans engaged, to start conversation, and also, again, increases the communications that you have or communication opportunities to be able to promote your partners and sponsors. And then finally, newsletters, which is pretty obvious, and your season ticket emails. In some cases, season ticket related emails are seen as more transactional and not really leveraged for marketing. In these communications, you would want the promotion of sponsors and partners to be a little more subtle, but there is key opportunity. So a great example is if I'm a new season ticket member and it's just before the first game, maybe you're going to have an email in that process that's going to send out, key information you should know. Here's the gate that's closest to your seat. Here's this, that, and the other. And maybe one of your parking lots is sponsored by a partner. So for example, here in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, there is a Publix parking lot. And Publix is one of the main grocery stores here and a major sponsor for the Falcons. And so in that email, a subtle way that you could have that is there are multiple parking options and possibly you list the Publix lot first. And so those are those subtle ways where you're not in your face pushing an ad, but there are ways that you can commit to being able to promote those sponsors and partners in a more organic way. And then how do we increase that inventory through types of personalization? So one example here is using your game day announcements. So, Jesse will talk about later around dynamic content in Eloqua. In other marketing automation platforms, there are other ways to do personalization. But if you think about a first-time ticket purchaser, a new season ticket member, or even an existing one, there are opportunities there to personalize that may be more relevant to one audience than another. In some cases, this can be done as personalized ads. And this is again how you increase inventory. So if we think about a game day announcement, we're going to send out an email the morning of the game with all of the key information: who's out on IR, who's projected to play, who's the opponent, whatever information you typically use. And let's say in that right rail, you have an ad for a sponsor or a partner. Instead of selling just one ad to one sponsor or partner for that particular game, if we personalize, you could potentially have 3, 4, 5, 10 sponsors who could potentially have an ad in that communication and have it be far more effective because we use it for targeting. If there's data in the database that indicates that this person has kids and one of your sponsors is very much tied to, something that would appeal to parents. I know here again in Atlanta, Home Depot is one of our big sponsors. Well, if there's something in the database that tells us that this person is a homeowner, then it's more advantageous for us to show a Home Depot ad to that person, and maybe the person who is, just out of college and renting an apartment and sharing a roommate. Not that we always have that level of detail, but that person, a Home Depot ad may not be as relevant, but you may have another sponsor, say it's Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, that is more appealing to that demographic. So within the same email communication, we essentially have the potential to represent multiple partners in a more targeted way. And what this does is, although it is putting that particular sponsor in front of fewer people, it is making the response rate that much better because it is very targeted. And so this is again an opportunity to optimize, to be a marketing leader, to help be strategic and support your partner's marketing objectives. And then optimizing performance. We have to adopt a culture of always be testing. And this applies to not just what we are doing for our sponsors and our partners. This really applies across all of our marketing initiatives. We should consistently be testing. But what we can look at is, testing subject lines, testing pretext, design, calls to action, placement of the calls to action. You can test creative for your partners and sponsors. So you may have a scenario where you're just going to have, Acme Co is our main sponsor, and they are going to have an ad in the right rail of every game day announcement. Well, rather than every week sending out the exact same ad, within the same week, maybe we are going to represent 3 or 4 different ads and see what types of creative resonate well. If there is any sort of sponsor-specific communication, does it resonate better to have the subject line or the pretext indicate the company that we're promoting? Is it better if we have it be a little bit more vague? Is it better if it's tied more to the team and then you see the promotion when you open it? These are all things that we can test and provide valuable information back to our sponsors and partners, which again shows more value and more ROI for them in terms of what they're spending. Not only are they getting the traffic and the clicks and the brand recognition and all of those sorts of things, they are also getting additional insight from you that they would not ordinarily have in their database. because your fan base may be made up of a little bit different demographic than who already subscribes. Um, so these are all key things that are important as you are trying to optimize that performance. And then finally here, creating a connected experience. So multi-channel orchestration allows for consistent promotion of the corporate partners. We want to have the same look and feel. We want to make sure that we are, driving that brand recognition, that we are connecting that brand to your team's brand. This workflow here is just a marketing automation example of how we are creating connected experiences. So, for example, paid search could then lead into some specific type of content that has a CTA. This is an Eloqua specific flow, but the overall flows of a multi-channel campaign are the same across. It could be a social ad that's going to lead into a nurture campaign, an industry publication, so like an ESPN or Sports Illustrated or something like that, that is then driving to a landing page with a form, things coming into an email program. So this could be promoting season tickets, it could be promoting an event, and then those email conversations that are happening, checks for seeing are they ready for sales, communicating that to the sales team. Um, and then you also have opportunities here where you're pushing out SMS, or we're going to send direct mail, or we're going to push them back to digital ads. Like just really understanding how people are flowing through, where it is best to use each of the channels. How do we create that connected, consistent experience? How do we have the messaging be cohesive? And then if you think about not just having these promotions are tied to the promotions are tied to the content of the corporate sponsor be just an email, you open up a world of possibilities. If you are doing a push notification through your app, or if you are sending SMS, or if you're driving them to the web page or landing pages, how do we tie all of those communications together in a nice little bow for a sponsorship package?